Elite design, better comfort, more grip. Our new Pure Grip Socks Elite add engineered compression, an anti-blister base, and more grip to keep you locked in. Available now at puregripsocks.com.
This is the Nike Tiempo Legend 10 Elite. It looks cool, it feels pretty good, it's remarkably lightweight, and while I do have some gripes about the overall shaping and the way that it fits, once broken in, it's a pretty comfortable pair of football boots. However, in the eyes of many, including myself, it's not a Tiempo, and that's because not only is it not kangaroo leather, it's not leather at all. This football boot is entirely made from synthetic materials, where for the first time in 30 years of Nike Tiempo models, you can no longer buy a natural leather Tiempo. And the question that most people have is why? Where to answer that question, we're going to start with a little bit of a history lesson, because as I'm sure you've heard before, history tends to repeat itself. Because all the way back in 2009, and yes, I do realize this is the 2010 World Cup colorway, Nike launched an addition to their lineup to go alongside the Tiempo, the T90, and the Mercurial called the CTR 360, the top-end model being the Maestri 1, which introduced the world to Nike's Kanga-Lite synthetic material, a synthetic designed to mimic the feel of kangaroo leather while still maintaining the benefits of synthetic, while also even incorporating memory foam and rubber elements. A design focused around control, and really the first ever control boots, the reason why the control category exists today. However, unlike the Fly Touch Plus synthetic upper of the Tiempo Legend 10, the Kanga-Lite material of the CTR 360 Maestri 1 was extremely well received. Why is that? Well, that's because in giving us the CTR 360, they did not take away the kangaroo leather Tiempo. Where back in 2009, the current Tiempo model would have been the Legend 3 with its premium kangaroo leather upper and realistically classic Tiempo design with a bit of a modern twist, where I think a lot of people maybe weren't as excited about the Legend 3 coming from both Legend 1 and 2. The line would certainly evolve quite significantly after this particular model, but the fact that something more traditional like this was still an option alongside the synthetic CTR, not to mention you could also get a kangaroo leather version of the T90 at the time, people were excited to see something new rather than feel like something was taken away from them. And what's also kind of funny is that very same year, Nike kind of tried what they just did with the Tiempo Legend 10, where the standard Legend 3 gave you a kangaroo leather upper, but if you opted for the Elite model with the carbon fiber sole plate that a lot of people thought was super cool on the Nike Elite series at the time, you got a full Kanga-Lite synthetic upper rather than a natural leather one. And maybe it was because this was a super expensive football boot, or maybe it was because nobody actually wanted a synthetic Tiempo. This was by far the least popular out of all the Elite series models, and truthfully, not a great feeling pair of football boots. Which is kind of interesting because you would think two boots using Kanga-Lite synthetic uppers from the same exact year would feel pretty similar to each other, but for whatever reason, the CTR just has such a better fit and feel than this synthetic Legend 3 Elite. So if Nike seemingly made this mistake 15 years ago, why would they go and do it again? Aren't we supposed to learn from our mistakes? Here's a couple reasons why I think they did what they did. With the first reason being one that I'm sure you guys are already screaming down below in the comment section, and that is cost cutting. Surely it is cheaper for them to make this synthetic Tiempo Legend 10 Elite than it was for them to make this kangaroo leather Nike Tiempo Legend 9 that was previously available, even though both of these boots retail for the same $240. Which I think is fair and certainly not an unlikely scenario when you're talking about a company the size of Nike. I'm sure they're always looking to increase their profit margins, but I also think you have to consider that top-end football boots as a whole are more so of a marketing tool for them rather than something that actually makes them money. Where think about it for a second, how many pairs of Legend 10 Elites at $240 are they making and selling compared to Legend 10 Academies at $85 or even the club model in the $60 range? Those are the boots that sell the most, and those are the boots that they're not really marketing all that much. Not only is there tons of money spent in research, development, and just general design of these top-end football boots that tend to be more and more over the top with their kind of tech-focused approach that all these brands are trying to push, but with the cheaper models, in a lot of ways, they're simpler products with even cheaper materials that they're still able to sell for quite a bit of money. They're not paying top players to wear them. That's a gigantic cost. So at the end of the day, I'd be surprised if the top end models, for how much money they cost to actually come to a final product, if any of them become profitable, especially given how quickly they change from generation to generation these days. What I do think is a bigger deciding factor here and a main driving force is the market restrictions associated with kangaroo leather. And it's not just Nike. We've seen the same from Adidas as well as Puma, where they've pretty much all strayed away from using kangaroo leather and have opted to either go full synthetic or for some type of a calfskin cow-based leather product. Where regardless of whether or not it's the country's main sport, the US retail market is the biggest in the world, California being the biggest chunk of that market, which is the only state in the United States that has put a ban on the sale of kangaroo leather products. Where I know it sounds crazy to stop producing kangaroo leather football boots for the entire world because of one state in one country, but I genuinely do think that there is that much money being left on the table that Nike, as well as other brands, have opted to go in that direction. Where this is by no means a political discussion, but it shouldn't be that much of a surprise that an American company like Nike is going to prioritize their biggest market in their own country. And should other states or other countries follow in their footsteps, which is definitely not unlikely, I think a lot of these brands are viewing it as being ahead of the curve. And it's not really a matter of verbally agreeing or disagreeing with what they're doing. The only way that we as consumers can potentially have an impact on what the future of these products look like is with our own wallets. Nike as a company is a marketing machine, and they're always going to push this idea that their latest products push the boundaries of what's possible in terms of footwear technology. That latest push being around, we can make a better football boot out of synthetic than we can a natural leather material. And if you go and buy that product, it only justifies and reinforces that story that they're telling us. And don't get me wrong, I think the Legend 10 Elite is actually a pretty solid pair of football boots, but I don't think it's a Tiempo. If you want something that's synthetic, that has leather-like qualities, it's a fantastic product. But if you want a leather football boot, I still think you're better off buying an actual leather football boot. And if you agree with that statement, regardless of whether or not you're a fan of Nike products, you should go and support the brands that are still producing leather or kangaroo leather football boots, and hopefully, if enough of us vote with our wallets effectively, we could potentially see positive change in the future of the Nike Tiempo, because as far as I'm concerned right now, this is not a Tiempo.